Assalamu alaikum. This is Salman your accounting trainer. Uh, and I would like to first introduce myself. I've been teaching for last 26 years, teaching different disciplines like O levels, A levels, ACCA. I'm also an accountant professionally, so I've got the professional the practical knowledge as well about the subject and the field. So basically, I would like to first mention that what is the main key point, the main, I would say, the features of this course. I would like to introduce myself not as a teacher, obviously, because you yourself is a teacher. So my main emphasis is going to be related to the facilitating you for teaching or to add value in accounting in the classroom teaching. So accounting is very interesting, skillful subject. And once students start understanding the course or the subject or the concepts, so their interest in the subject, especially when they start doing the practice, because becomes very important. So it is always suggested by any accounting teacher. You must have also suggested to your students. So the main or the most important thing is that you should first explain the concepts thoroughly, and the second most important thing is the practice. Evaluation, assessment, testing, that is all related to the later stages. So O levels accounting and in the later stages, the A levels accounting, both are based on pure concepts. Especially in recent years, they have changed the syllabus like a bit in the manner that the pattern of the paper has been changed for O levels. So when the pattern of the paper is changed, obviously the assessment criteria is changed. When the assessment criteria is changed, so automatically students learning and the teacher's explanation need more depth. So you have to give explanation during your lectures in such a manner that students always understand the basic concepts as well as the the real in fact implication or the real application of the concept in the exam paper. So O level papers used to be like in the past, sometimes some long question like 40 marks question. But nowadays they have reduced it to 20 each question. So automatically they want students to be tested for more questions, more analytical questions sometimes, right? And more topics to be assessed, or more concepts to be assessed, right? So this is the main thing. So this is basically a main demo, right? In terms of like how we are going to prepare ourselves for real classroom teaching related to this subject. Okay, so this is the main concept. So syllabus is the most important content which is provided by the Cambridge. This is all you are familiar, right? After the syllabus, I always suggest that you can divide your syllabus according to your own choice. How to divide syllabus according to your choice? That is important. It does not mean that you change the order of the syllabus, the entire order of the syllabus, but I would say the best idea is that you develop syllabus according to your own way that you are going to teach to your students. For example, class or the grade wise. If you are going to start with the ninth or the O1 grade, the one who are the beginners, I would say with the for accounting. So you cannot start with any very logical topic. So it is always suggested that start with very enjoyable topic, right? The basics as well as the things that students can easily relate to their real life. So once they get connected, right, they start enjoying the topics or the concepts, then they enjoy the subject as well, right? So this is a very basic suggestion most of the teachers know and most of the teachers already use it, right? So I would like to add one thing uh, about the preparation of or preparing the lectures, right? So how the lectures should be prepared. to add value in your teaching. 1 minute. I'm just going to share the screen first, and then you will be able to see a few things, right? Okay. Okay. So you are familiar to one thing. Teach the why before the how. What does this mean? This means to me is really important, especially once we are doing the subject, right? The accounting. Because accounting is a subject of pure logics concepts, right? So if you give a proper definition, simple definition, or a brief definition, you need to explain the scientific reason. Accounting is not a scientific subject, but there is always a logic, there's always a basically basic reason behind it, right? So you have to explain always why this concept has been included in our syllabus. And that can only be related when we are going to explain it through practical example or the real life example. Like for example, if you give a concept of capital, right? If I share you one thing, right? Let me explain one thing. And for example, let's assume if we see a term capital, right? So what I do usually, once I'm going to explain this term capital, so I write this term, for example, it's a very basic term of the subject. We write it as what? Capital. I always say capital is something which is related to what? Savings. So once we use this term savings, so most of the students already know, right? So this basic term actually creates an understanding, basic understanding for the students. Yes, we have got the saving because sometimes students also have the savings. But if you want to convert into capital, right? So this term relates to business because saving relates to a person as well, real life, in real life. But capital is not related to a person. It is purely related to what? Business. So over here you can add this word why. Why do we need to classify, right? Because of a reason that basic idea of accounting that accounting is the language of business, right? It is the language of business, right? So then they get connected and they say, okay, capital ka term is related to what? Only business, right? Hope this is clear, right? So I am not explaining the basically the concepts. I am mainly emphasizing on this term why you have to make mainly emphasize when you're going to explain any concept, right? So emphasize on why. Like for example, I've used this example instead of saying debit, cash, and credit, capital. Ask them, okay, and create understanding in such a manner they are always willing to question things, right, in the class. Because sometimes it is thought, it is a basic thought of a teacher that if we are going to add so many questions, right? So initially, so students might be, feeling that teacher is putting us actually in a question answer session. But in accounting, if you keep the environment of the class, very friendly, right? Controlled but friendly. So they start learning and they start asking. So after a few days, after a few lectures, you will realize they automatically their understanding is has already been developed. Now they are encouraged, or students are encouraged to solve the question themselves. And this is the basic principle of this subject, right? That the students feel independent and feel confident, right? So this is actually just an example. You must be aware of this, that debit cash and credit capital. Ask them why cash is increasing, why does the owner have a claim, who receives value and who gives value, right? So then the students understand the logic rather than memorizing the rules. Because there is a basic idea that if they start memorizing accounting, so they might forget in a very shorter period of time, right? For example, during vacations, right? If they are away from the teacher, for example, June and July, usually in Pakistan, and Karachi vacations are usually, are like are the vacation months. So during the academic year, so they might forget. But if the logic is clear, so during the vacation, they'll be thinking around them. So why cash is increasing? Why does owner? So in each case, they will be thinking themselves and they will be trying to create, right, some understanding. So the main thing that we must realize and we must uh, put into our lectures is gonna be more important a word that is why than what how. Because how refers to a process, and process in accounting is mainly practice, right? So hope this is very much helpful, right? That if we are going to use this term why, so it makes students to think, makes students to respond, and this is the main objective of our subject, right? Now, like for example, if you want to begin lectures or lessons, I always say that uh, if you start writing a basic statement or an advanced statement on the board or on the screen if you're teaching online. So they might find the statement and they start taking it as considering it as very difficult. So we always suggest that try to exam to start with a brief, simple example, right? For example, I've written something like Ahmed starts a bakery, or you can also like start like this, that what do you think that how many of you want to do their own business and how they would be able to start their business, right? So they start taking it as important, right? That we are giving them importance, right? And they give start giving the importance to the subject, right? So I will start a bakery with 500,000 rupees or dollars, whatever, right? He buys equipment, sells cakes, and start. So this way they start thinking of, right? Yes. And then you can give the definition of accounting. Then in accounting, we study about the business events, and then they will relate how are the business events. I always avoid using a term transaction in the first class. Transactions is a very common word in accounting. Students are very much familiar to it, right? Most of the people have heard from the parents, elders. But transaction might be a new term as well for a few students. We have to carry most all of the students together. So in such case, I would suggest use term business events, right? Or you can use that what happens in a business on daily basis, what occurs in a business on daily basis. And that we call as what? Transactions. So then they, and always I ask on the very first day that give some examples of business events or transactions. So they start putting the examples. Sometimes they share their not business examples, but they share their own domestic examples. So I always tell them accounting is the language of business. So please share examples which are related to business. Okay. So this slide, this brief idea is related to facilitating, basically related to that always make students curious or to think about business events. So automatically once they say see the question, so they are already familiar. Yes, these business events we were thinking of, and now we are seeing in the form of question. because 100% accounting questions are based on real life examples, believe me, because they use person name, they use some examples, and automatically they get into it, right? So these two examples were related to uh, the basic idea of explaining something. Now, basically, these are the basic rules. I would say the golden rules or the basic rules for every accounting. To me as well, I always, once I'm going to the classroom or I'm going to start a lecture, I'm going to record a lecture. So I always recall these rules. Because without these rules, things will be obviously very complicated, right? Or not organized. So better would be that we keep the things organized. Now, first, we explain the concept. Why I'm emphasizing on this term procedures? Procedures means once we start making them to do practice or they start doing the reading the question, right, and then underlying the points. So we I always suggest that first of all explain the concept thoroughly, discuss with them, and then do it, right, and go forward, right. So encourage school students to discuss at this stage. Once you explain the concept, discussion is really important. Discussion, I believe that it is not good once you're done with the topic, because sometimes some teachers have this idea. Once the whole topic will be done, then we will ask students to discuss their queries. It could also be a good idea. It's up to your methodology of teaching. But I suggest that once you are going to explain a concept, right, because sometimes concepts are connected, right? And most of the time, accounting concepts are connected. They are not separate or independent concepts, right? They're always depending on each other. So whenever you explain one single concept, the discussion should be on the same time, right? And encourage them, right? Because some students in the classroom are very reluctant to discuss because they might be very intelligent, mashallah, but still, in fact, encourage, because you can also motivate them by this way that your point of view is important, so that if your point of view comes to us, so each student is going to learn, right? So you can also make students to realize that although they have understood the concept, but their participation is going to add value in the classroom, because you might not understand in the future. So any other student's explanation will help you out, right? Because sometimes in the classroom, the focus is not 100%. The child is intelligent, mashallah, he's regular, he's punctual, but focus might not be there. So due to that reason, there might be some problems, right? Okay. Now focus on understanding rather than memorization. You are familiar to this, is really important in accounting. Then use real life example, provide regular practice with that. Now sometimes we give a homework, right? And you want to start a new lecture next day or new concept next day. Um, so due to some reasons, actually, we do not provide a thorough, detailed feedback. Feedback in accounting is mainly when you discuss the answers they have written or the questions they have solved. So it is always needed to give a feedback. Now, feedback these days, since sometimes time is too short, feedback could be written form, it could be recorded form, it could be in the form of an audio, simple audios. Sometimes I also share simple voice notes, audios, not in the form of a thorough, complete formal lectures, but I share this voice notes. For example, if I send a voice note, see in this question, this point is to be explained like this. So a student who was stuck on one single point could easily relate it to the main concept, right? And then they start solving the question. So rather they wait till the next week, because sometimes we give students homework on the weekend, right? Because we believe that they've got ample time to solve it, right? And to revise the lectures, and then they do it, right? But still, I would always suggest that please give a timely feedback to the students, right? So it is not necessarily 1 hour period should be utilized for teaching. 1 hour period should be divided actually in a proper manner, that always keep 10 to 15 minutes for feedback, discussions, move around, right? Sometimes some students are more comfortable when you move to them, when you discuss with them to them one to one. right? And I have seen, believe me, a group was not performing good. Their performance in the test were not good. Once I stopped, I reduced my pace of teaching. Uh, but I started engaging with them, right? In terms like I visit to them, right, to their desk. I say, okay, what is your problem? And believe me, one more thing, what I've observed for last couple of years, sometimes I write on their journey, right? When I write on their journal or their notebook, so they feel really good. Okay. Sometimes I draw a T account for them, right? Initially, once they are doing it or making it. If, for example, some students are not or they're reluctant to write notes from the board. Okay. So sometimes to encourage them, I just write it. So this creates basically a link. I would say, group learning technique or method with the students, right? So feedback means that you have to give your feedback, that how do you think, and encourage them, right, to your feedback, right? Encouraging and celebrating the improvement is really important, especially these days when the students are not motivated. Okay, so the motivation or some other things become their motivation. So this is really bad, right? So always we as a teacher or we as teachers, we should always in fact motivate them and celebrate their achievements. Okay. Now practical thinking, interactive and exam focused. Exam focus is a very broad term. Okay, exam focus means obviously once you start teaching accounting, first 2 to 3 days, you cannot share with them the exam questions, but you can gradually, you know, like share or share with them the real purpose of Cambridge examination systems. So once they get to know that this is the real accounting system, then their understanding becomes useful, right? Now, this is roughly my teaching hours or hour or time allocation. Accounting is basically a practice subject, right? So after explanation, and this is not necessarily obviously the explanation will be first, then the student practice, and then the feedback. And believe that during the 70% student practice, I always handle their trouble or their problems with them on their desk, on their notebook. Okay, so then they start asking questions. Then they start, sometimes students just ask, "Sir, please come here." So that is also that you become part of their practice. Try to understand this important factor. This generation is different, right? So they want you to do sometimes of work, right? Like your own children want you to do the work, right? So likewise, it's the same case, right? So once you engage yourself with the student practice, so it becomes really interesting, and really I would say that for as a teacher, it will be really motivating, because once they start doing it, so it becomes very easy for you to teach advanced concepts, right? So this is important. This is to be noted. This is to be handled in such a manner. You may change this proportion, like 60% student practice, 30% teacher, but 10% feedback is, I would say, is a must, right? Without this feedback or the reflection, how students reflect to your work, right, is really important. Okay, so this is really important. I love to actually collect, um, by connecting with the students, the feedback, right? So this is also very important thing. Okay. Now, how to train students? I always believe that in accounting, it is not just about teaching accounting, it is about training students for the exam, right? So, training is based on some important factors, keywords. Because I remember when we join any training courses, so I remember the keywords. I forget the whole. My might forget the whole training session. Because sometimes they give too much of uh, information as well as the written content. I might not see it right after some days. But one thing what I remember for sure is the keywords, right? So keywords are important and make them to write and make them to memorize, right? Memorizing basically helps them to apply quickly. Learning helps them to apply quickly, right? Another thing is that read the question clearly. Teachers, the accounting teachers are very much familiar to this word adjustments. Adjustment is a very broad word, right? Tell them what is the meaning of adjustments. Adjustment means that you have to fix things, you have to change things, you have to bring changes. So this is something really, really important, right? So give proper detailed meaning of adjustment and ask them, what did you think about adjustments? I also sometimes give those students a target and a task uh, that they should also write their own methods of adjustments, right? So when they start writing the method adjustments, so automatically they learn better. Now show all working in accounting carries marks. I've observed some teachers as well as some students ignore this aspect. Students are working on the question paper, some students are working on the answer scripts. I've also observed some teachers uh, are showing the working of the calculations in a very absurd or haphazard manner, which is not at all acceptable by the examiner. So I always encourage, like when maths teachers always willing and they're always interested to ask students that please show working, please show, in fact, the things related to the basically the working. So working is really important. Working is really important, right? So show working and encourage students to in fact to show working in a very neat and tidy way. So then it will be accepted by the examiner. Now labeling is important, right? Dates and everything is extremely important. This is something what during the lectures we explain it, right? Definitely to the students. But during the practice where sometimes teachers also forget it, right? Sometimes I forget to write the date. Okay, so but I always mention it, but you do write the date because when I'm going to check your work, I will check the dates. And especially during the test, um, if they do not write the date, so I put a proper question mark. Put a proper question mark. So actually they realize that it is important. That means the date is really important, right? Balance the account accurately, neat and clean presentation, right? And manage the time effectively. In accounting, in O levels, not necessarily, but in A levels, accounting paper is actually sometimes students face some huge trouble related to time management. Okay, in O levels also sometimes if you spend a longer time on the um, one question, so automatically you run out of time for the other question. Sometimes students are writing theory, the definitions and the explanations. If their language is weak, so automatically their understanding the question and writing the answer is going to take longer time. So right from the very first question, write them down the answers with the students sometimes. Okay, I also use a technique, right? Sometimes I show you like this. If I'm writing an answer, for example, if I write an answer for prepaid expense is an asset, or it is the expense paid in advance. So which one is acceptable? Students say both are acceptable. I would say priority is important for examiner. This is the first and this is the second. Again, over here, just writing asset is not acceptable. You should write proper term, current asset. So write a correct and write a complete answer. Both the statements are correct, right? But order is different. And if you write them together, so you are writing it in the form of complete. So in examiner reports, they always encourage a correct as well as complete answer. Because if you're writing a complete answer, so automatically it is correct, right? So this is a basic, most important understanding for writing theory questions, okay? Or writing answer for the theory question, right? So this is very helpful thing. I hope it will be helping. It will be actually a good idea for the students as well, right? So manage time according to questions, the whole paper, because the whole paper is designed in such a manner that it is not always 100% difficult. 80% it is, I would say it is based on knowledge means the basic understanding. Related to this, they want you to apply concept means application, and then they also want you to evaluate yourself. This word is being used these days, evaluate, but we should understand the real meaning of it. Evaluate means, I simply say, they want you to make some decision making, or I would say conclude, or they want you to put your own point of view, your point of view, POV, right? So 80% paper is based on this, right? Sometimes in accounting, 20% of the paper, especially in MCQs, and I would say sometimes some calculations might be difficult in the paper, which can easily be covered, which can easily be catered if you are always explaining the high or advanced concepts. So these are not more than 10% or sometimes even less than 5%, right? So, but explain them. So 80% of the paper is tackleable through good practice. And during the practice or just before the exam, they realize 80% paper is quickly or rapidly being done, right? Rapidly being handled. 20% was new, so we could easily think over and we could easily handle it once we would have actually, if we would have done better practice, so we could easily handle it, right? This is something, a very common comment by the students, right? So this is actually important, right? So paper pattern is also extremely important aspect of this, right? So keywords, if they know the keywords, so basically they can easily handle the things. Now, keywords are the definitions. Keywords are sometimes, a few words that students learn during practice. Okay. So during practice, when they come to know, so this is something extremely important, right? In CI exams, they do not use any real life words and they expect students that they should know it. No, this is not the case. The keywords is already written in the syllabus, in those books. During our lecture, we always share with the students. So automatically, becomes part of the student's practice. So keywords or not does not mean that they can use something out of the box from the real life and they test you. And for each topic, there is a keyword. For each topic, there is a keyword. Okay, right. So this is something really important, right? Now, one more thing that I always emphasize to explain is this error method. This error method is basically to connect with students. Sometimes I do something, I write something partially wrong. Why? The purpose is that I want students to correct themselves, rectify the mistakes themselves. Because once they rectify the mistake, it becomes part of their real learning as well as motivation. Like in maths, I remember when my teacher used to teach me, they used us to create sometimes some questions, right? And I used to create some questions. So I remember those topics were really good of on my part. I really enjoyed those topics. This is the same as the concept, right? For example, if we write an incorrect journal entry or an incorrect knowledge on the board, share with the students, right? And ask them what's wrong in this actually case. So students start thinking. Sometimes I have also noticed they start checking their lectures. So I do not discourage them. I say, okay, fine, check from your lecture because it is sometimes really difficult to recall, right, everything, right, spontaneously or quickly in a very brief, a short period of time. So I allow them. When I allow them, right, so they start exploring, right, and that exploration is time based because they want to quickly check from the lectures. So it is also building up their brain muscles to find from their own content and apply immediately to answer or correct the wrong things. This is, believe me, extremely important for to improve uh, analytical skills, analytical thinking. Nowadays, we're thinking about AI, artificial intelligence, is basically going to help us. I do not say that it is going to take over. No, I say help us, right? So, but it will only be able, or we would be able to gain help of AI if we develop some thinking skills, right? And this thinking skills is related to every single subject. It's related to language, it is related to Urdu language, it is related to English language, maths, accounting, economics. Even some students are doing the global perspective. So every single subject requires critical thinking or analytical thinking. So this activity, believe me, especially is a topic in a syllabus that is correction of errors. This technique of working with the students, sometimes I do not say to my students, I'm teaching you, I'm working with you, right? Let's work together. Okay, because if I teach, if I am going to actually pose myself just as a teacher, right? So again, initially I said they might be reluctant to ask questions. I don't want that. Okay, because more they ask question, more I provide the feedback, quickly the syllabus will be completed and better understanding will be developed, right? So this is something really good technique I am using these days, right? Okay, now one last thing I would like to share with you that you always do it according to your own plan, but this is what I do usually, right? Um, Not necessarily the 7 days we teach in a institution, school, college, but they have got the 7 days, right, for working. I have removed Sunday from this list. Sunday, I would say that even if a person is doing the workout, so they do it for 6 days, 7 days off, right? The Sunday is usually off, right? So what is it? How actually to design it? Monday, a new concept. Why? Because students are, are willing, they are expecting that a new concept will be shared by the teacher. So do share a new concept. I never write on the board new topic. I always write new concept. When you write a new concept, so they say, okay, a new concept, but I always clarified this concept will also require you to recall the previous things. So once they see, they study, they understand the concept, then actually I engage them in practice. Brief, short is practice. This might be on the same day as well, or this could be also on the next day. Because if you are going to explain a new concept on Monday, you will also be sharing the example. So your example should be created in the next class. I will tell you how to create an example. So it covers the whole topic. Because in 90% cases, I try to create my own questions, right? Students say, sir, when we are going to use the book, when we are going to use the past papers. So I always tell them, by the grace of God, I guarantee them that by doing the example, you will be able to at least 70, you will be able to solve at least 70% of the exam style questions. So focus on these examples, what I've created myself. So during my explanation as a new concept, I always try to create my own example. I always suggest you to create your own example during training. I will help you that how to create your own example and how to create in such a good level that it relates to exam style question. Then students will practice Wednesday mixed questions. Mixed question means according to level of difficulty, easy, average, and sometimes some tough questions, but tough questions as part of discussion. Remember, tough or the toughest question should be part of not explanation. I avoid it. Try to understand, I avoid because by doing basic and average question, they have understood the concept, they've applied the concept. So they don't expect from us the basic explanation. They want us to explain the tougher area or the toughest area of the question. So try to put it in the area or the zone of discussion, which would help you to basically I would say satisfy, motivate students more. Thursday could be a past paper day. Why Thursday I usually select? Because after Thursday, usually there's a weekend, right? Friday, sometimes those who are teaching abroad, right? Like UAE, Friday is an off day. So I would love to do past paper so that on Thursday they have collected some information into the past paper, so they can do it on the weekend or the off day. Friday is a quiz. It's a like it could be an online quiz. It could be like Google based, responsiveness based quiz, MCQs, picture, right, voice note. Because I also started one thing last year, last year, in fact, 2 years, for 2 years I'm doing it. For example, if I've created a WhatsApp group, so I actually throw a question on the group, right? I shared a question, voice note question. For example, if I say depreciation can also be calculated on monthly basis, although the percentage of depreciation is per annum or annual. What is your point of view? So a few, two, three students put their answers. Sometimes I record a voice note. Sometimes they write an answer, right? So then I give my opinion. So it is also a feedback, right? It is also a very brief quiz. So this way you can engage your students over the weekend. Okay, anytime you can engage them. If you are traveling, they are traveling, they can do this, right? Saturday is a day of corrections of errors, right? So ask them, read the concepts, see your practice work, see the mixed questions, because in the mixed question you also had some difficult ones. See the past paper you did with me, you did on your own. Also go through the quizzes and feedbacks and then correct your errors. Because correction is important. Correction is important because you must have heard from your principal, HM, or the coordinators at your like school. They say, "Aapne corrections कर ली? Are you done with the corrections?" Are you done with the corrections? So, what does that mean? Corrections by the teacher, yes, it is important. But once at least in a week or twice in a month, or at least twice in a month, do check the students' work with the students so that they will realize, okay, this error or mistake I'm doing again and again. And if you make them to avoid those errors, making those errors repetitively, if they're doing it, so it is the real success. Okay, so during this demo, I've explained that what are the main key factors. As a teacher, we should always remember, we should not forget. So our classroom teaching, and I emphasize on one thing once you're teaching accounting, connect with the students. A few examples and strategies I've also shared. So this slide will also be shared with you, right? So that you can easily connect that what it is actually related to. So, but for a teacher, I always emphasize on one thing. For a teacher, it is always important to prepare a lecture, yes, but do prepare your lecture according to time. So that is important. Okay, time-based planning, time-based preparation, time-based quizzes, everything is important, right? So during this course, I will be explaining how a paper is developed. Okay, what should be the the proportional division of the level of difficulty of any paper, how much it should be difficult, easy, and I would say that very easy, right? Why not? Why not a very easy content? Because Cambridge Examiner also includes sometimes very easy, then average, and then sometimes I don't call it difficult, I would say challenging or out of the box sometimes, right? So students believe that we did not study it. I say you did study, but during the practice, it would have been actually missed out. That's why you could not do it. But leave it, okay. But be confident as much as you have done, right? So that is the important. So the key features of this plan or this basically, I would say that training program is making of papers, making of question, exam style questions. Because if you start making questions for the students, so you can understand your group, and according to them, if you make questions, so it's going to be a really good, uh, in fact, resource for the students. Okay, so this is something I wanted to give idea of the things. Hope things are very much clear that what we are going to do. Right. So thank you so much. Most of the details will be shared once you will be part of the program or the training. And gradually, it requires much of the things which would be um, needed according to your own requirements, I would say. Because of the trainee requires something, and according to that, we change the model. So it becomes very interesting. Thank you.